Welcome back to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
The show goes a lot of places into the realms of health, well-being, optimum performance on all levels. It's a great place to explore what's possible and what it means to be truly natural AF. And this episode is the meeting of the psyche and the emotions with the body and what's underlying ill health and disease and all of that.
So today we are talking about German medicine with our beautiful friend Melissa Gray, who we also met in the Friends of the Truth community group where Isaac and I met. So I think this is a great episode for newbies, for people that have never heard of German medicine or have heard of it but don't really know what it is. Mel explains a bit of the underpinnings and the origins of German medicine, but we give some real world examples of, experiences that we've had and that Mel's had, and Mel really breaks it down and tells us what's going on from a G&M perspective. So we'll use German medicine and G&M interchangeably. G&M just stands for German medicine. I'll just preface that now. And it was a really great conversation. And that's what I love so much about G&M is that it brings this mind-body connection into play. And, Mel actually mentions shadow work a few times throughout this. And, we've had Yerasimos on previously talking about how the body is the shadow. And this is just another way to do shadow work. So we love it. I love German medicine.
Yeah, it's definitely opened my mind up a bit more to the reasons behind some of the afflictions that we can come across in our lifetimes, which makes it a lot faster to find the right methods to heal yourself. If you're listening to this episode and you hear the word cult dropped a few times, I was a little bit confused by it, but I guess there was an article that we mentioned in the episode that is directly discussing that Mel wrote. So we'll link that in the show notes so you can go and get the context for that. Because cult is a word that gets tossed around and it's a label that kind of sits heavy on things. And I just want to point out, I've seen a pattern where people tend to make cults out of anything. Sometimes it's with a top-down approach. Sometimes it's just the people that adhere to a strict layout of the teachings or whatever that is that they're following, and the people can tend to make things a bit culty. So in my opinion, that doesn't reflect at all in my experience on what G&M actually teaches. It's not a religion. It's not a group that people join and aren't allowed to leave or anything weird like that. At its basis, it's just noticing and observing the fundamental reality that we're in. There's no religion or any group that you have to belong to explore this.
And the irony is that the people that point fingers and say like things like G&M, are a cult, or these freedom-based communities are cults, they can't ever see like how much the medical system is actually a cult. Like that, it's all the cult tactics. Yeah. Like if you leave, you're persecuted, you're excommunicated, you're, labeled an anti-vaxxer or like whatever. There's a million labels for people that don't want to go along with the mainstream medical system, but they're the people that will never see that that's actually the real cult. So it's so ironic.
Yeah. And I'll put this out in the future. Maybe we should figure out someone good to bring on to discuss the nature of cults and stuff anyways, to really nail that down and lay it out.
That. I have
Maybe
a little
Owen Benjamin on because he's been called a cult leader a few times.
Yeah, I have a little secret obsession with cults. I've got to say, I love learning about it because when you start to learn more about the tactics and how they sort of operate, you can see it so much more clearly in more of these much larger structures. Like we often look at cults and they're just like these little fringe groups of people that get together. But then you've got, look at Mormonism. That's huge. And that's 100% a cult. So yeah, I would absolutely love to have someone on to talk about that. And again, I think that it's really important to see these things so that we can I think it's really important to learn more about these things too, so that it helps us get to know ourselves better, because especially for people that have joined cults or, been part of them or been born into them, unfortunately, that's a reality for some people. They actually don't know any better. So I think it's really important information to get out of there.
Yes. Anyways, psychology and psyche and all that stuff has always interested me as well. So, but that's why Germany medicine interests me. So I hope you get a lot out of this. If you listen to the show long enough, and you go back to any of the episodes you missed, there really is kind of a path that's being laid out here, things that we've explored that have made huge impacts in our lives and that are still making impacts in our lives as we're sort of improving all the areas that we want to focus on, whether it's our health, our finances, our mindset, our personal power and discipline, and all kinds of things.
So relationships is a big one.
Yeah, big one. So as always, Natural AF is sponsored by Natural Art Form, the parent company of this operation. And I started Natural Art Form back in 2023 as a response to being injured and being sick and tired of the medical cult, as we just mentioned, and deciding to carve my own path, make a remedy that actually helps stimulate circulation to the area that's injured and help facilitate a faster natural healing without any, gross ingredients, without any propylene glycol or Vaseline, I don't know, whatever the gels and stuff that I've used previously that don't stand up to my test as natural AF for me to put on my body. And for our listeners, as a sign of appreciation, we want to give back to you 10% off your order using code NaturalAF10 at checkout at naturalartform.com.
And that's 10% off your entire order, no matter how many times you order. So that code will always be valid for our listeners. And if you want to stay up to date with what's happening with Natural Art Form, sign up to our mailing list. So we send out a monthly newsletter. So we send out any sales that we have, product launches, pretty much any update that we have with the business. We've got a few things in the works with new wholesalers. So super excited to announce that very soon. So don't miss out and join the mailing list at naturalartform.com. And if you join the mailing list, you'll also get another 10% off any order.
Another way to support is just like, share, and subscribe. Send this episode to somebody that you think would get a lot out of it, or if they're dealing with a health issue and you want them to explore Germany medicine, this would be a great intro for them. So.
And please leave us a 5-star rating, especially if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'd greatly appreciate some more reviews and ratings. It helps us spread the word and it helps our podcast reach more people.
So I think that covers all the bases. Let's get into the episode.
Enjoy, guys. Melissa Gray has been on a lifelong mission to create her own freedom and happiness, and now she helps others do the same. Drawing from Germanic healing knowledge and the biological laws of nature, as well as years of experience in spiritual and holistic health teachings, she empowers individuals to unlock their full potential. A proud advocate for natural birth, conscious parenting, and natural learning, Mel believes that liberating our souls is the work we came here to do. She helps freedom-loving individuals transcend the fear-based medical paradigm and step into deep trust in their body's innate wisdom. At the core of her work is perceptual change, helping clients shift the way they see symptoms, illness, and healing. Using the knowledge of the biological laws as a foundation, Mel incorporates powerful tools such as EFT tapping, DeMartini, and the work of Byron Katie to guide clients through deprogramming from limiting beliefs and fear-based conditioning. The real therapy is in the knowledge itself, understanding that the body and the laws of nature are always working for us, not against us. Mel offers one-on-one GHK consultations, leads a monthly study group in the Here for the Truth podcast community, and teaches in the New Earth Wellness Academy. Her mission is to help others reclaim their health, freedom, and sovereignty, mind, body, and spirit. What a beautiful bio. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mel.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So for our listeners, anyone that doesn't know us, we know Mel from, feels like back in the day now, from the Friends of the Truth group where Isaac and I met. And we also met beautiful Mel here, who's just an absolute wealth of knowledge, especially when it comes to G&M now, but so many other things. So it's such an honor to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's so many interesting things from just the bio, and we'll get into it in the episode, but the EFT, the DeMartini, I'm not familiar with that. And then Byron Katie, I came into contact with working through some issues in previous relationships. And there's lots of value in all of that. So,
yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll just want to give you the floor for a little bit, Mel, just for our audience, anyone that doesn't know you, just to share a little bit of your journey. And I guess maybe some of your more significant life experiences that led you to the work that you do now.
Sure. Well, I guess I can start a bit at the beginning. So I grew up in Sydney, North Shore, if anyone knows it. It's pretty kind of upper middle class, conservative. So in a lot of ways, it was idyllic. I had a lot of freedom and our house was on the edge of the bush. And I pretty much just grew up with childhood friends in nature. But at the same time, I was going to quite strict, authoritarian, all girls schooling. So it was in a bit of a juxtaposition with my free life. So I know that in childhood I started kind of coming up against what I now call is like fear-based systems of control. I could really spot manipulation, and I didn't like it. I wouldn't call myself a big rebel. I wasn't getting in trouble all the time. I just knew what I didn't like. I didn't like the religion being pushed down my throat. I didn't like the way my friends who were boarders from country areas were treated in the boarding house, all that kind of thing. So I think that kind of planted the first seeds of questioning for me. And so, as all good North Shore private school girls do, when they finished school, I went to uni and I studied to be a PE teacher, which is in really good grounding for what I do now, because there was a lot of biology. But after uni, I kind of knew, just wasn't feeling great about going into schools. Wasn't really sure what it was yet, but wasn't feeling good about it. So I went off travelling. Thought I'd go and teach in London. In those days, you could get a 2-year, not sure if you can still do this, but you could get a 2-year working visa in London. And I ended up gone from Australia for 3 years. And it was in London that I met the future father of my children, who is South African. And we converted an old Land Rover into a motorhome, and we spent 2 years driving across the world really slowly. We drove from London to southern India. So this was mid-90s, before 9/11, before the world changed. Yeah, so it was this experience that traveling just helps you really shift perspectives and see new ways of the world. But I started to really see how things that we'd been told growing up, like how we should feel really sad and sorry for people in third world countries because they were just all suffering and didn't have what we had. And then I got to these places and just saw how beautiful and connected to their communities and nature these people were. And yeah, just traveling really slowly, living outdoors in nature, got really in tune with everything. So when I came back to Australia and fell pregnant with my first in 2000, I just knew I was going to do things differently. So long time journey there, coming up against all my very mainstream friends and family. I'm not unfamiliar to that idea of his Mel being a little bit culty, joining a cult, doing everything right. so different to us. And if you think what you're doing is so great, does that mean you think what we're doing is bad? And all that kind of resistance and coming up.
Sorry, Mel, before we move on, can I just quickly ask you, when you said you wanted to do things differently with your kids, was it like, did you want to have a home birth? Was it not vaccinating? Like, what was it exactly? And was it just something instinctually where you're like, I'm not doing this? Or had you started to research some stuff and look at things and that kind of informed your decision?
Started off instinctually, and I believe that's because of all the experience that I'd had in my travels. In say, Pokhara campsite in Nepal. We got stuck up there waiting out the monsoon before we could travel down into India. And so I spent a lot of time with local women helping them in the rice fields, and they just would have their babies on their backs or playing nearby, just so happy. Wow. And so when I came back, it was kind of expected that I'd get an obstetrician and go to the best hospital and do all that my family kind of thought would be the best and safest thing for me. And I went, no, sorry, that's not what I want to do. So it wasn't until my third child that I managed to get my home birth. I kind of wanted to do it with my first child, who ended up almost being born in the car. Because, birthing and mothering just came so easily to me and beautifully to me. I loved it. I just felt like I'd really found my place. So yeah, to answer your question, it would be instincts first and then researching. So researching in those days wasn't quite what it is now. There was a Yahoo group I was a big part of, Sydney Attachment Parenting, and it was there through that group that I met Meryl Dorey, who I know is a family friend of yours and who I watched the episode. Yeah, she actually came to my house and did a talk for everyone on vaccinations. So, yeah, I did raise my children, in truth, my son had a few early because we were going to South Africa, and there was a lot of fear put on me for that. So, yeah, I sought an alternative doctor and I held him while he had them.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So I think he had maybe 3, and then my 2 girls have had none.
Awesome.
Yeah, my youngest daughter was born into my arms, completely free birth on my own at home.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Good on you. And to do that, back in a time where it wasn't, we didn't have social media and the internet hadn't proliferated in the way that it has now, where, now you can look up these things and you can find them pretty much anyway. Back then you just didn't have that. So good on you for doing that and just following with your instinct, your intuition.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so fast forward to COVID now.
Yeah, by the time COVID came, when my kids were small, I studied reflexology and energetic and spiritual healing, and I started a home-based practice. It was quite hard to do with small children at home, and my husband was away for work a lot. I didn't have a lot of support. So I ended up getting involved in the kids' alternative primary schools, parent-managed primary school. And my youngest Sky just loved to be there. As soon as I'd walk in with her, she was a baby. She didn't have to put her feet on the ground. She was like 6 months old in my arms, and older kids would come up and grab her, and I'd be doing meetings on marketing and where's Sky? And have to wander around the school and find her, and she'd just be with someone in one of the rooms or out on a walk in the bush. Yeah, so I kind of switched into really exploring alternative education because I was doing the marketing for the school. So I was taking people through who were disheartened with their schools mostly and sharing the philosophy of democratic or progressive kind of education, it was called.
For some people from my part of the world, we don't really know what democratic schools are like. Could you describe a little bit about that, just to bring context?
I think, is it Sudbury schools are in America, I think, aren't they? Have you heard of those? Maybe.
I've never heard of them, but...
No. Okay. So democratic or progressive education, the schools, so it's different in everywhere that it happens based on the government regulations and that kind of thing. So there's some parts of the world where your schools can be a lot freer. In Sydney, there's a lot of restrictions from the government, and even more than,
of course,
other states in Australia. But the gist of it lies in the understanding that children learn in their own way, in their own pace, in their own style, just like the way they learn to walk in their own timing, not in standards and systems like school has you believe. So it's very child-led. The school we were at, it kind of works backwards to satisfy the government's key learning areas. So the kids have a lot of freedom, a lot of project-based learning, and then the teachers and the parents in the background have to go, say they're building a cubby house in the bush, then they have to go and pull out all the key learning areas from there. They used English in this way, they used maths in that way, and then report that to the government. There's very, very free versions of this. Summerhill School in London is one. And I think it's called the Sudbury system in the States.
Yeah. So no bells, no like operant conditioning, or you hear the bell and then you go to your next class and then you get your whatever. It's like,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. And no, no bells, no subjects, just, more project-based kind of learning.
Yeah, well, it sounds a lot. I'd never heard of this schooling either, but it sounds a lot like Steiner, more geared towards sort of Steiner's philosophy and Steiner schools. Because my brother went to a Steiner school in at primary age, and it's all learned through play, and it's not as structured. They don't do the bells. It's lots of arts and craft and like hands-on stuff, and
really similar to that. Steiner and Montessori have a person that understood a certain way of child development and developed a schooling system around that, whereas democratic progressive kind of education, it's a bit more fluid in the different places. So it depends on the parents, it depends on the students, on how it's run.
And is that just for the younger age, from from kindergarten up to sixth grade, or does it go even higher?
Mostly in New South Wales, it can. In New South Wales, it's very hard to do in a high school setting. I've been to conferences for this, democratic education or progressive education conferences to New Zealand. That would have been early 2000s, and they had some wonderful free schools there that are completely free. They didn't have to do any reporting to the government at all. They could run it however they wanted, and there's an incredible high school there. It's amazing to see how it works in high school. There were kids there that were 14 and had full-on successful businesses happening already.
Wow,
that were making,
that's incredible.
Supporting their families almost.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's different. So I was thinking it's like for the Americans, democratic schools are not like communist learning camps. It's not.
Yeah, I was going to say
the same Democrat idea as Americans' version.
Not a cult.
Calling a school now democratic or progressive would have a totally different meaning, I feel.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's funny how the terms, and I was always looking for different terms. And at the time I was thinking sustainable education, but then that whole word sustainable has this kind of new meaning with the greenwashing and everything. Yeah. So I don't like that anymore. Yeah, funny. Yeah, so I think there was a big, after my kids left that school, they went to their mainstream high school. That's what they wanted to do. And I started a business importing homewares and jewelry from Africa. Wow. So I had a collaborative shop and went to trade shows and did all that kind of stuff, and became a little bit of a normie for a while, I guess you could say. I was kind of relieved to stop kind of, the criticism, the culty label, the battle, and just, but when COVID came, it shifted.
The worldwide
everything.
Cult exploded. The actual cult showed its face.
And COVID hit, and I found myself working in a shop, which was not good. And I wanted to do things differently in the shop to my business partners, who wanted to put the signs on the wall and insist on masks and everything. They were great if they listened. Sorry, guys, you were great. But there was, just a bit, it just wasn't for me working in a shop anymore. And I knew it was time to get back into my kind of healing stuff. So this is when I came across G&M, listening to Dr. Melissa Sell on a podcast episode.
Was it on Here for the Truth, or was that a different one?
It was.
Yeah, that was where I first heard of Dr. Melissa Sell, and she's amazing.
Very good.
It was Here for the Truth, and it just really, really hit home for me. And I think it was because, so I had this deep trust in my body, mind, body, spirit and soul, that it wasn't broken, that it had its own way to heal itself. But my views were still that this is because I had a strong immune system. I could fight things well. And I had a strong, mind, body, soul trinity. And so it really, there was kind of like a missing link, because I did really feel like we weren't broken, and it was these fear kind of based systems that were telling us that it's always that there's something wrong with us. So the example I have is in the schooling system. If a child is having trouble learning to read when they're 5 in the required time, they're marked as a remedial reader. It's always there's something wrong with the child, not the system.
Right.
And I see this in health as well. You know, you blame, if you're getting a cold, you blame a virus. There's always something, or my immune system is not strong enough. So this just kind of hit that missing link that took me to the next level, to really embody and sit deeply in this knowledge that I am not broken, that everything that happens in my body happens with meaning and purpose and in divine timing and natural order with all things. Yeah. And it's not easy to adopt this, to deprogram from everything that we've learned and be told. And there's no quick fix. It's not a modality. That's not some quick fix that you can find. It's just a life. It's a new shift in perspective, and then you'll be using it and implementing it for life and maybe future lifetimes.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I'll learn all the lessons that I came here to learn in this lifetime. Perhaps I will.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that with Germany medicine. For people that haven't been exposed to this before, maybe give us a brief history of it and what does it actually show or teach?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the important thing to understand is that it's not a modality. It's not a healing modality. It's more like, it's a set of observations. So, sorry, what was your question? Did you want to know
where did it originate from? Yeah, how did it originate, and how do people use it to identify their illness and what's going on with it?
It's very hard to explain without it. There's hours and hours of study to really kind of integrate it for a lot of people. But it started. Right. There's a doctor, Dr. Harmer, and he was born in the 40s, a German doctor, and he was pretty kind of mainstream, regular doctor. And he was quite innovative. He had several kind of inventions. He invented a scalpel that could cut finer than any scalpel before, so cause less trauma during surgeries.
I didn't know that about him.
He was married to Sigrid, who was also a doctor. I believe they were living in Spain, and they were quite successful off money from the inventions that he'd made. So they were working quite a philanthropic kind of way. They were helping people in the slums of Spain. It was during this time that his son was shot. Controversy over whether it was an accident or not. It seems to be an accident, but then there was a lot of stress about it. Anyway, it ended. His son died in his arms in hospital a few months later. And so it was shortly after this that Dr. Harmer developed testicular cancer. Now, he had access to cancer patients he was working with, the clinic he was working at, and this new technology of the CT scans was being used. And so he just started, he wondered, so alternative health would go, okay, I've got cancer and I've been through this stress, the stress caused the cancer. Mm-hmm. But because he had such an acute kind of traditional medical kind of background, he went that step further and said, why this stress creates this particular cancer? So he had that thought, and he went into talking to patients with cancer and asking if they'd been through any stress or shocking situations. And he just started correlating. And he discovered through looking at the brain scans, he ended up mapping out the brain psyche organ connection through using brain scans. So we go into ontogenetic layers, brain layers of the way that you evolved and where you have the conflict, where that lands, what part of the brain, and he correlated what tissues are now going to adapt. And he could see where this landed in the brain. And he could eventually prove these connections in 100% of cases, 100% of the time. The problem that we have now, and I find probably the most culty part of G&M, is that not many people can read these brain scans. So what we use when we're working with G&M is we listen to people's stories and we have an understanding of the nuance or the vibration of disease. Dr. Harmer called them special biological programs. We no longer see the body is diseased, broken, faulty in any way. The body is adapting for your best chance of survival through a situation that was stressful. And so when you know this and trust this, you can release fear. But when you understand the nuance, the vibration of your program, you can look out for the stories that you're telling yourself, the way that you perceive the world, the way that you're keeping this program going. And you can either make a practical shift where if you're coming up against this every day when you go to work with an angry boss, you can leave that job and do something that's more in alignment with who you are and what you want to do. Or you can do some work to shift your perspective and understand that you're going to come across grumpy people all the time, and I can choose to react differently to this guy if I like, if I do the shadow work essentially to work through that.
Yeah, I think that's why German New Medicine, and that's why I think German New Medicine resonated so much for me when I first started to learn about it, because for so many reasons, but that psyche, brain, physiological connection to sort of the metaphysical and the physical, which is, you know, what we're coming into now is this knowledge. We're coming into this age of Aquarius where we're learning so much more about the metaphysical, and that's always what precedes the physical. So yeah, learning that, and that it's all based on our perceptions, and it is such a different paradigm to the current medical paradigm that most people are under. And you wrote an article, which I highly recommend people to go and read, because it was a great article, and it was called Why G&M Can Come Across as a Little Bit Culty. And so I'd really love to just, in a nutshell, for people that haven't read it, and I do recommend people go and read the whole thing, why it is such a stark contrast to the mainstream medical cult, because as we know, and a lot of people are, you know, just starting to learn this, it is a cult. But then they'll look at things like German New Medicine and go, well, that's a cult. But, you know, when you actually look at it, it's so not.
Yes. Yeah. I read an Instagram post talking about how a fish doesn't know they're in water. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the article. It's kind of one of my favorite analogies, but I feel like, you know, we're just born into this worldwide cult that's so pervasive that we don't know any different. And it's a lifetime of indoctrination and it's a fear-based programming that essentially comes through all these systems of control, through religion, finance, health, education. The same kind of manipulation happens, and that's to make us feel that we're the problem, that we're broken some way, that the system has the savior, the magic fix, the pill, the vaccine, whatever it is, that's going to save us. And so it's a victim mindset. So the thing that I find that's when people are having trouble adopting G&M is that they're slipping back into this victim mindset somehow, which is no mean feat to deprogram from, as I said, because been there for generations. And yeah, so German New Medicine asks you to take radical self-responsibility, we call it. And some people just aren't interested, aren't a vibrational match for it, I guess. Dr. Harmer said something along the lines of only share G&M, the principles of G&M, with those who have ears to listen. I think there's a verse in the Bible that says something like this. Is it Matthew? Those who have ears to hear. And it's really important to know, because, and trust me, and everyone who's in this kind of free thinking alternative space knows that when you're trying to push your ideas on someone that's not ready to hear it, it doesn't go very well.
Yeah. We've all been there.
Well, I love that stance of it, where it's not pushing, but it's inviting people in to be ultimately responsible for yourselves, to choose and put yourself in the driver's seat, be at cause in your environment, and take responsibility. And I saw a really interesting post from Instagram. I sent this to Lex, but it was talking about the change in astrology. And right now there's a change in where Neptune's at. Neptune, I don't know if I can find the post, but basically Neptune's shifting. It's going out of Pisces, I believe, going into Aries. Okay. And what it was saying was, in Neptune and Pisces is like this in basically like an evolutionary astrology, which is kind of like things that affect culture and society at a large scale. Yep. That Neptune and Pisces is more elevating the victim. Neptune and Aries is more elevating the hero, taking responsibility, leading, taking charge, like all of that. And I just thought that was very interesting that I read that post today, and we're talking about this. So
that is interesting, because we are seeing that shift on a pretty collective scale now.
And I think COVID really fast-tracked that too in society.
Absolutely.
Don't know what happened there, whether they made a mistake or it was divine intervention. But
Yeah. And for people that are turned off by the word cult, it's like, it is the root word of culture. It's in there. And there's a lot of cult programming going on in the MK Ultra side and Netflix and all these other movie studios, where they're making people afraid to join any group because they're afraid that it's going to be a cult. And it's just like, well, if you're fully responsible for yourself, you're not a victim, you're not going to end up in a cult anyways. So if you go there and you realize you don't like being treated a certain way, just leave.
Yeah,
that's
you
right.
have the power to do that. Yeah.
That's right. And if you're being offended by being implied that you're culty or in a cult, there's another area for you to investigate. What is it about that triggers you? Is it that people are seeing you as separate to them, so you feel a disconnection that's creating fear, or and so then how can you feel more connected with others, or less triggered by those who have different opinions to you?
Do you have any personal stories of yourself, of things that you've discovered health-wise with Germany medicine, and then how were you able to bring a resolution to it?
Sure. Well, I had an experience in, I was in Greece holidaying last year, visiting. I travelled with my mum to visit my sister, who lives in London and is married to a Greek man. So we had a wonderful holiday with her family in Greece, travelling like locals do, which was amazing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But on like the first day we were there, we went through Athens, and it was in summer, last winter, their summer. And it's there's bushfires everywhere in Greece. You've heard about those. So we're in the city, and this moment. So in G&M, there's the moment that these programs start running is called a conflict shock. A DHS. One of the other reasons it gets a bit culty is this secretive special language that's a bit takes a little while to learn, but that's the same with anything when you start learning it. You need to learn the new language. So Dr. Harmer named this conflict shock DHS after his son who he lost, Dirk Harmer syndrome. So it's a moment that catches you off guard, is isolating. You feel a little bit alone in how to resolve it. And it's kind of acute. So this moment can be something that you mightn't even consider later because it happens so quickly. But so I definitely had a moment like that in Athens because we were sitting in a cafe having a drink and everybody's phones and this loud kind of machine in the cafe started going beep, beep, beep. And I went, oh, what's happening? What's happening? And then it was very surreal because I saw everyone lift up their phones. And I said to my sister, what's happening? And she says, there's a fire nearby and it could be coming this way. I went, oh, gosh, should we worry? Yeah. And she said, no, let's not worry. Let's keep going. We were op shopping with her teenage daughter. Let's keep going. So from that moment, my sinuses start adapting because that's what you use to sniff out danger. So it can be called a stink conflict. In this case, I'm literally sniffing out danger. So when I'm active with the conflict, my sinus passages are widening. So I have more capacity, more space to be able to sense and smell if this danger is coming. You can see how we would have evolved this sense in nature. If you live with a tribe in a forest and there's a fire nearby, you need to be able to sense that to keep you and your people safe. And so, the stink, I'll just say the other nuances of the conflict for people because it's often when you get a cold, you get this sinus thing. Anything that feels off, that you're sniffing out a problem, you're trying to resolve, anything like that can cause a stink conflict. Anyway, the next morning I woke up at about 3 a.m. with incredible pain in my sinuses. And I think my system had already been primed because of the flight, and I hate aircon. So the aircon really stinks. Yeah. And so I'd probably been adapting already then, and this just tipped it over. So I'm sharing a room with my mum, and my mum's really, she's in her 80s, and she was really fearful of catching something from me and ruining her holiday. So want to resolve my conflict, but I'm really worried about my mum and a little bit annoyed that she just doesn't get that I'm not contagious, which is irritating as well. So this went on for 3 days or something. It'd get a little bit better in the afternoon, and then I'd wake up at 3 in the morning in a lot of pain, spend all morning trying and get rid of it. Mum was starting to say, we're going to have to take you to the hospital and get medication and all this kind of thing. I went, all right.
All the things,
Get your act together, you're going to fix this. So I just went down to the beach and I did an EFT tapping session, and I really just tapped into all that was going on for me around my mum and her fears and how that all stunk and was horrible and feels dangerous to me, that she thinks I'm dangerous. I don't feel safe and protected by my mum, who's meant to do that. And then I just went and lay in the Mediterranean, and water is so healing. And then I shifted it to just being held and safe and being at one with the universe. And then after that, I looked out and my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, was coming in for a swim, and I went and had a chat with him. It's very funny because I just started weeing and weeing and weeing, which is a symptom of the healing phase. I was having a little giggle because I was just having such a lovely conversation with him, and weeing a lot. And
like just standing in the water, not just out like, you know, on the floor, but, you know.
It's so funny because when I told my sister, she said, oh, I hope she watches this. She'll find it funny too. She said, weeing in the Mediterranean, there's bathrooms. So I went, doesn't everyone wee when they get in the ocean?
I do.
Oh, that's gross. I went, really? No.
That's why it's so salty.
I do. I think it's only natural. You're in nature. It's normal.
Yes. Yeah. It's I don't think I can ever get in salt water without weeing. But anyway. And then it was gone. I woke up the next morning. My mum was so shocked and a little bit proud of me. She goes, Mel did her EFT and she's cured herself. And it wasn't because she was so sure I had caught some terrible bug and I was going to give it to her. It was going to go on. It didn't happen. All my symptoms were completely gone the next morning.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It is pretty incredible when you do shift out of this fear-based paradigm that it's always something external that's happening to you. Okay, well, what is it within me? And there's so many things. And this is why you said, I think, like that it's not like you just learn this knowledge and then you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I get it. No, because it's in the language we use. It's like, even I was just thinking, our parents from quite a young age, when something's hurting or something, they say, what's wrong? You know, and so again, there's that it's insinuating that there's something wrong with us. And I still catch myself sometimes internally going, oh, something's wrong, because I'll feel some pain or something. And then I have to go, no. What are the symptoms that are presenting? And I kind of just reframe it in my mind. But I'd love to get a little more into, so when we are kind of from a G&M perspective, when we are kind of looking internally to, you know, well, what's presenting and, you know, trying to identify the conflicts. And I know there's a lot to learn, but sort of what are the main ways that the I guess the bodily systems are kind of looked at in terms of conflicts and how we can identify different things that are showing up?
Yeah. So there's an incredible free resource online called learninggnm.com, put together by a lady called Carolyn Markelin. And it gets quite a bit of criticism from younger generations as being very old and clunky kind of style website, which for me, it's fabulous. So there's free lectures on there and search functions where you can look up symptoms. But basically in G&M, we don't look at the diagnoses, let's say. COVID, for example. People say, I got COVID. And I always go, well, what were your symptoms? Because each different symptom means something different. For those that have looked into the virology fraud, they understand that there isn't even a COVID virus, but that's another point.
Yeah.
Well, it's never been proven anyway.
Yeah,
still to this day. Yeah.
We look at the specific symptoms. We want to understand what tissue is adapting. So in the case of the sinuses, this is ectoderm tissue. It's the last layer of the brain to evolve and to develop when you're developing in the womb as well. And it's related to social, emotional kind of conflicts. And we know with all ectoderm tissue, we have tissue loss in the conflict active phase, and that's the biological purpose. That's what's happening to help me through there. And then in the healing phase, another big part of G&M that turns conventional medicine on its head is that the microbes, the bacteria, fungi, TB, all that, the microbes are there to assist us through the healing phase. They're like the microsurgeons or the firemen are there to help put out the fire. They don't cause it. They're never, microbes are never the cause. This is the fourth biological law as discovered by Dr. Hammer. And he said all through nature. So in like, imagine in the Brazilian rainforest, you understand that there's fungi and mushrooms that cover kilometres and kilometres, acres and acres, hectares, and they can communicate with the trees. And this is the same with us. When we're conflict active, the brain sends a message to whichever microbe is going to be most appropriate for the repair phase to start multiplying. So it's there in appropriate numbers for the repair phase, if it's available. So, for example, TB bacteria is very beneficial in the healing phase of endoderm brainstem programs. They're morsel conflicts. And in those conflicts, you have cell proliferation in the conflict active phase to help you process the morsel, the nourishment that you're having trouble processing. So they would create extra fluids to help move a morsel through, something like that, you know. And so then the TB bacteria breaks down these extra cells when you don't need to adapt in that way anymore. And that's when you get swelling, pain, infections, stuff like that. That is deemed to be bad. And it's often the way we know with shadow work, we know with this manipulation that there's an avoidance of pain. Pain, it means something's bad. So in the programming, we are to avoid pain at all costs. Whereas in this analogy and you know, with shadow work, that it's important to trust the pain, to go into the pain, to have a look at it, to understand it. Yeah, so all healing happens in an environment of inflammation, which is pain. But when you understand that you're healing, that you're repairing, there's not something wrong, it makes it easier to manage it.
Yeah. And does that, the cell proliferation that you just talked about, does that apply to like cancers and tumors? Because this is a huge one for people, and there's so much programming around cancer. Like you can't watch a movie where someone gets sick and it's always cancer. And that's, for me, that's just clear, like that's a program, and they want people to fear cancer, and you've got to get it cut out, and you've got to go through chemo, and you've got to do all these things. But from the German New Medicine perspective, again, it's your body's just helping you to try and process something. So how does that relate to cancer specifically?
Yeah, so Dr. Harmer discovered the first biological law. He first called it the iron rule of cancer. Cancer can be cell proliferation, but it can also be cell loss when you think of things like leukemia and stuff like that. Bones degrading is also classed as cancer. He first thought this law only applied to cancer, to tumours, and then realised it's all biological programs are either cell proliferation in the conflict active phase or cell loss in the conflict active phase, and then the opposite in the healing phase. When you are finding extra cells, which are often called cancer, it depends, and I'm not a medical expert, so this is the area where I can be a little bit shady, so forgive me if I say it wrong, but in my understanding, it depends on when the diagnostic happens, what they find, at what stage that this cell proliferation, and that's classed. So if it's an intense conflict, the activity of how much cells are proliferating and what's happening is dependent on the intensity of the conflict and how long your conflict active for. So when you get the diagnosis of the cell proliferation will depend on that. But through GNM, in most cases, it's an indication that you're active with a conflict. The tissue that's adapting will tell you exactly the conflict theme that you can relate to and hopefully resolve. And then the choice is yours, how you go through the healing phase. So say you had a glandular breast cancer diagnosis, you've got extra cells being produced in your breast gland. This is a nest worry. So you have been really worried about somebody close to you, whether it's it can be partner, mother, child, because in biology, if someone in your nest was in danger, you want to produce extra cells to produce extra milk to be able to nourish the person you're worried about. That's the biological purpose. And so when you stop worrying about them, this bacteria and need to come and heal this extra growth. And if you've been active with it for a long time and have a considerable tumour, this could be a considerably painful and disfiguring healing phase. So with the right information, what you do with it is up to you. And we don't, in Germany medicine, tell people that they shouldn't visit mainstream medical. It's their choice. So if they don't have the time and space and capacity to go through a healing phase of the breast, they may choose to have their breast removed or go a more medical route or go through the healing phase. Challenges thwart with whatever you do if you've got that kind of serious adaptation, and it depends on your unique perspective and so if you are very fearful of mainstream doctors, then going into hospitals can create new conflicts. If you are completely trusting of doctors and you go to the hospital and he says you've got an aggressive breast cancer, that in itself can be a conflict shock and create a new program. And that brings us into the theory, which, like virology, is also a theory of metastasis.
Right.
Yeah, it's also a theory. It has not been proven. Yeah, and GNM explains it as new conflicts, and the most common cause would be diagnostic shock. So a death fright adapts the lungs, which is often self-devaluation. Lymph node, breast cancers often go into lymph nodes. Self-devaluation around the breast. Oh, my breast is going to be disfigured, ugly, cut off. Then that area's adapting. Yeah.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because my mind started to actually go there, and I was like, oh, what about when they say that a cancer has metastasized? Because in the mainstream they just say it's just spread, it's moved. Yeah, but from a GNM perspective, that makes so much sense that there are new conflicts, because it is totally understandable that to go through something like that, especially if it is a stage 3 or stage 4 and it is quite advanced. Yeah, it makes perfect sense that more conflicts would arise going through that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll point out that real quick, the metastasizing thing, they've never actually found in your blood cancer cells traveling from a tumor to another place and setting up shop and causing another tumor.
And they don't screen blood banks for cancer cells because they've never found one outside of a cancer.
Yeah.
And if they were like cancer cells, they wouldn't be able to cross the blood-brain barrier and go through lymph either. Yeah, that's the theory. It's really interesting. So much of mainstream medicine, they don't understand because they don't have this knowledge, and it's based on assumptions. Yeah. And dangerous assumptions often because their treatment is just to manage symptoms and pain. And without this understanding, it can be dangerous often in the case of chemotherapy.
Yeah. Or just cutting it out and removing something without understanding really what's going on. Very dangerous.
Well, and often you see that people that have cancers cut out, they often, quote unquote, come back. Yeah. And that explains that perfectly, because if the conflict hasn't been resolved, then that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Or come back somewhere different because the whole thing's created a new conflict. the fear, the priming of the fear. And you think, as you said, Alexa, everything that you know from watching movies and all that stuff is priming your psyche so that when you do get the diagnosis, it's terrifying without this knowledge. Yeah, so G&M people, Dr. Harmer, I believe, always said, learn G&M before you're sick.
Yeah.
Because once you're there in that fear, it's very hard to deprogram from that conflict active phase. So that's the sympathetic nervous system state, and it's activated for a reason. You know, you've been activated in conflict active in sympathetic nervous system to help you through this stress. You want that, but yeah, it has taxes on the body, and it's very hard to think clearly when you're like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the same thing happened during COVID, right? Like all this stuff was happening and they were like trying to learn their rights and learn all this legal stuff about, you know, what they, you know, what they could stand under in terms of human rights. And, you know, that's what everyone was kind of said afterwards, was like, you need to learn this stuff before something like this happens, because trying to learn it in that state of stress and fear and, you know, everything that's going on, it's like this high pressure cooker that you're in, and it doesn't really land. Even if you're learning it, it doesn't kind of hit you in the same way. So that's why I highly recommend people look into G&M, because I think at the very least, even if you don't fully understand it, even if it can just start to shift your perspective to come out of fear, I would say that's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had an interesting experience going into the resolution of something. So after I visited Australia for the first time and met Alexa in person for the first time, had 3 amazing weeks and really connected. And we'd been, you know, people have heard our story before, but when I went home, it was a bit abrupt. It was like we overslept a little bit. We had to rush to the airport. There wasn't time for the goodbye that we both had anticipated. And Alexa was crying, and I'm like, you know, stalwart. I'm like, I got to go and I got to get on the plane. I'm not going to cry in front of all these people. So all those emotions just got stuffed. On the plane, it's about a 12-hour flight to LA. Towards the end of the flight, just as we're about to land, I started getting like itchy around the inside of my wrist. And that started bumping up, and then it became full-blown eczema. I've never had eczema in my whole life.
Yes.
It spread from my wrist all along the inside of my arms. It spread to the other side, all along the inside of my arms.
So
and then
in G&M, the rash, it's a separation conflict, and the rash on the inside is missing the touch of someone. Outside is pushing unwanted touch. Inside is missing touch.
Yeah.
But it's like exactly that.
It was immediate. It was like crazy. And I won't tell you where else I got the rash, but it was crazy. But I was dealing with it, and I was like, I mean, whatever I could think to do. I mean, I think I was aware of it enough. I think I was even trying some EFT, but didn't really know how to do the tapping properly. But I was talking to somebody who had a conversation at the Music and Sky Festival. It might have been with Eileen McCusick or somebody. But they were telling me that they're like, hey, try homeopathics, because we were looking at the energetic connections and thinking that possibly homeopathy might intersect with what we're learning about with German new medicine about the resolution of it. And somehow it has a frequency. Yeah. And it totally worked. I went home after weeks of this. I had weeks and weeks of just having this rash continue to spread, and went to this festival, met these people, talked about it, went home, got some kind of sulfur homeopathic as I matched the symptoms to it, and it resolved within a day.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I do. It seems like it's a vibrational match to the healing that you had. But I would be interested in if you guys separated, if it happens again, what the actual, because there'll be a moment of shocks at the airport.
Yeah.
So that when you have this conflict shock, your psyche takes a note of everything in your surrounding that might be relevant to act as a warning system for next time this might happen. So if the moment happened at the airport, there could be something there in your psyche that reminds you this is when I lose touch. I lose touch with Alexa. I lose.
So there might still be more to clear there, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
Yeah.
So it takes it I think. So things like homeopathy or alternative stuff we see as excellent support to this information. There's, having a rash is horrible. And as I said, when you're active with conflict or deep in healing symptoms, it's very hard to make changes and find resolutions. So it's good support. It's just the distinction is knowing that it wasn't the cure. So a remedy can be the cure in the way that you think you believe in it, because it's that strong. So that can relieve symptoms along with other things, like if a remedy. So if you're in a sympathetic system state and you take a remedy that's vagatonic, that's calming, you shift out of into you can shift your state and ease symptoms, or shift from healing phase, vagatonic, back into a more active phase, take symptoms away. But the real work is understanding this vibration, this nuance, this language around this, and it's beautiful that you guys don't feel safe. It tells me that you feel safe together.
It's
beautiful. Well, I straight away, because I know separation conflict pretty well because I've had lots of skin issues throughout my life, and straight away that's what I said to him. I was like, well, that's separation conflict, and wanting to, because it was literally, he got it all in the places where he would hug me, hold hands, all that stuff. And it really is. Yeah, just such a beautiful, it's such beautiful knowledge to have, like, in that moment, even like we were separated, just knowing that was why. And, because again, I think the other thing is too, when people have quote unquote something wrong with them or they're presenting symptoms, there's a lot of unknowing. And then, so I guess, and that's why I think it's so easy for people to adopt I must have caught something off someone. I was at the airport and there was people, I must have caught something off someone. But I actually would love to get more into this too, because I know, and I still get a bit confused by this. I mean, I have a pretty basic understanding of Germany medicine, but I kind of get it
sometimes too.
So sometimes symptoms will present when you're in the conflict active stage, but then sometimes symptoms will present when you're in the healing phase, like when it has resolved or is resolving. So how does that? How can you differentiate?
Most symptoms are healing phase. There's some, so ectoderm, when your skin is adapting in the conflict active phase, you're having cell loss, but you also get numbness, hyposensitivity, with the purpose that you can't feel the touch that you're missing. It's you're numb to it, and you also get a little bit of short-term memory loss to help you not obsess, and you can be a bit more relaxed on this separation. So that's an example of stuff that happens in the conflict active phase, and then the rash happens in the healing phase, and then you get hypersensitivity. awful.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It burns. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Mostly when you're conflict active, you're not aware of the symptoms. So mostly that the cell loss you won't notice unless you're on a hanging conflict for a really long time. So if Isaac could override that short-term memory and just not stop thinking about how he's going to get back to you, keep having things that trigger it and open it up again, the cell loss can come to a point where you get, you can see it in heels and stuff like that. You get fissures start to open up. Yeah, that kind of thing, really dry skin. Yeah.
And does that same thing go, Mel, for like cancer? Going back to cancer again, because for most people, as the cancer or the tumor is forming, they feel fine, but then often they'll get sick or they'll feel unwell and go and have a checkup, and then they'll find something. Is that the same thing
and
where the conflict active, the cells are building? Yeah.
I think that most of us have probably had many cancers in our lifetime grow and dissolve without us knowing. I actually had, now I really hope my mum doesn't listen to this. She'd freak out. When I finally got out of working in the shop, dissolved that business, could fully put all my efforts into working from home. It was such a relief. And one of the symptoms I had was some blood in my stool. So that's a symptom that some extra cells have been dissolved. I was having trouble digesting the situation in the shop. I did not want to be there. It was frustrating. I was annoyed that people wanted me to wear masks or all that kind of thing. So with my knowledge of G&M, I see some blood in my stool and I went, yay, I know exactly what this is. And I'm healing something, I'm repairing, and it was like, and I just was laughing at myself because before this knowledge, to see that is terrifying. There's something, all those images of past, my father's had some problems with colon cancer. So all that story, as you said, everything you see on television, all that would be there creating fear. I have to go to a doctor. I hate doctors. I have to have invasive tests, all that gone. Stella, and
it's such a contrast.
I just started laughing my head off.
I love that.
This is amazingly freeing. I'm celebrating seeing some blood in the toilet.
I actually love that story for that reason, because what a stark contrast to instead of saying and be like, oh my God, I've got to have tests, something's wrong with me, whatever, to be like laughing and being happy about it. I love that.
It's amazing. Because of all the fear around cancer, if you've got a growth in your colon, and this could be quite significant and causing problems. So you might, it might be the best thing to get that part of the colon cut out. The problem is with conventional medicine and all the cancer fear is they go, just to be safe with the spreading, we're going to take all this out. Whereas someone with the knowledge of G&M, a surgeon with the knowledge of G&M would only take the blockage part. And so much less trauma, much easier to heal from. And no fear of the metastasis. All that's gone with this knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that was such an interesting contrast in the way that I would have handled things. So I was trained as a SOCM medic in the Army, and that's more than just a typical combat medic. Like, you're trained to basically identify, diagnose, and treat all kinds of conditions out in the field away from any doctors or hospitals and handle a multi-trauma casualty for up to 5 days with no assistance. maybe you'll have your team members hold a bag of IV fluid or whatever. So fungal infections, any kind of infections, any kind of acute illness, chronic illness, there's ways that we're taught to identify things. If I would have used and relied just on that with the skin issue that I was having, for instance, I would have started putting all kinds of different creams on it. Probably would have done nothing, all the eczema stuff. And this is what happens with people, because I've known some people that have had eczema, and after you had it for a while, you just kind of accept that, oh, I have eczema. And then you just bring it in, and that's part of your story.
Yes, so identity.
I probably, if I didn't know this, I probably would have still had eczema, quote unquote, now. And I'd have these flare ups, and I'd be all embarrassed about it, and like just not knowing, and really just kind of living more stressed and more confused, bewildered about my body, and like frustrated with it.
And connecting with people who have eczema, and you have this shared victim experience and understand each other. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was more understanding. I had more understanding, more compassion. I was like, I stuffed that emotion, and it was a lesson, and maybe just something to think about for in the future. If I have this feeling, it's like I need to learn to let go and just allow myself to cry, even if I'm in public. It's like, if I don't, the other option is stuffing it, and this is what you get. It'll probably happen again. So
yeah, and because you're holding back that cry so much, you maybe miss that last good, proper, connective hug that might have been nourishing for you. Interesting. And the eczema's one that you can see the creams work, because the cortisone creams. So when you've got the rash, you're in the healing phase. They actually work because it's a sympathetic something in the cream, so it puts you back into the conflict active phase. So you're adapting again, and the rash goes, but it's all, you're going to have to go back into that healing phase at some time. Yeah, you're just delaying it. That makes
so much sense. Yeah, and so many people that use cortisone creams say that it works when they're using it, and as soon as they stop, it stops working. Like, it doesn't work. That's why.
Right, and I'm not saying never use it, because I can see like it's effective, and there might be something, you had eczema on your face and you had a podcast interview coming up, and you don't want to be there with it. That would cause more conflicts. Great. Yeah. It helps. It's not, I think there's a really good message too in not always having this is good food and this is a bad food, and it kind of dissolves all that, the right cream and the wrong cream, and they're all just tools, or do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to think of
Absolutely. I think what you're saying, and again, that's what I love about German New Medicine, is that you meet people where they're at. So if they're not ready to fully, exit from the medical system, and they don't have that capacity yet, you can meet them where they're at, so they can start to integrate the knowledge into wherever they're at. Or they might not be into the medical, but they're into more the alternate health space, which is still under quite an allopathic model. So, and there are problems within that as well, even though it's alternate to the medical system. So they might be there, and but they can still integrate the knowledge with that stuff that they're doing. Right. So
and that brings back to how it's not culty, because it's about empowering you to giving you the knowledge and helping you deprogram from the fear, so you can make the decision that's best for you and your unique person and your unique history and psyche. And there's no coercion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just want to quickly touch on, before we start to wrap up, is there anything that German New Medicine doesn't apply to in terms of when we might express symptoms?
Yes, interesting. So exceptions to the biological laws and the special biological programs are malnutrition, chemicals and toxins, the interesting thing that I always find is that people, when they're first learning this, can so say for vaccine injury, for example, they can go, well, that's outside the biological laws because my child got injured by the vaccine, so that's why they have these symptoms. But with the knowledge of G&M, you can usually find a conflict also. So this would explain why, because we don't understand that there is an immune system fighting something. It's a support system. So with vaccine damage, you would think that the toxins cause the damage, but why are there so many children that have that same group of cocktails injected into them that have no symptoms? And so German New Medicine will explain that in that they have a different experience with their psyche. So as I mentioned earlier, when my son had the vaccine, I instinctively knew to hold him close and breastfeed him and keep him feeling safe and protected while he had the vaccine. Now you can see what a conflict it would be if the person that is meant to protect you and trust you most hands you over to a stranger who brings out this scary thing and injects you. Massive conflict.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's videos going around that I'm sure a lot of people have seen now of children like literally being held down and being vaccinated. And I actually can't watch them. I find them really, really confronting and really upsetting. And that I always think that from a G&M perspective, what on earth is that poor child now going to, like, that conflict, shock, what's going to present now? Yeah.
So many things. And so you can see the difference for this child to the one that's being held and protected by their mother, mightn't even notice the little prick because they don't even see it coming. And so, yeah, I think there's often always both, and it can be a little bit of an easy bypass to just blame a vaccine or blame the mold. The mold's another huge one in our psyches. Yeah. It's the mold. So technically it could be out of the biological laws, but consider how you feel and react when the Byron Katie, what happens in your body? How do you feel? Who do you become when you believe that you're breathing in mold? And the body is incredibly powerful and intelligent. I saw this in India. I saw sadhus who had buried himself underground for a week, underground in a meditative state.
Oh, wow.
I saw floating rocks. I saw incredible things in India. But
floating in the air or on water?
And in like a glass container, and you could put your hand all around it, and it was floating.
Wow.
Mind blown.
That's trippy.
Yeah, trippy at a festival in northern India. But there are also stories of sadhus that have taken terrible toxins and survived because of the control that they have over their psyches and minds, and how incredibly powerful the body is, and how incredibly potent this placebo or nocebo effect is. So if you believe you're taking a poison, it's far more likely to act as a poison in your body, right?
Yeah, exactly. And is there one more that's exempt? That's 2, 3. Oh, is it like accidents and injuries? Like if you fall over and break your arm or something? Yeah.
Yeah. So, clearly your body's repairing because of the accident. But, there's still a lot of G&M kind of work to do around that, because that accident can create a self-devaluation conflict, which also affects bones and tissues and your rate of healing and the way that you heal.
Yeah. And then just quickly to finish up, like I'd love to hear a little more about, like, so, you know, we've spoken about the healing phase and you know, the conflict resolution, and you shared your story and how you used EFT. And I know there's so many things that can be incorporated with G&M to help with the conflict resolution. So, but maybe just speak a little bit about, you know, EFT and the things that you use when you're working with people to help with that conflict resolution.
Yeah, sure. Well, EFT is an incredible nervous system regulation technique. And as I mentioned before, when you're conflict active, it's difficult to find the space to help come up with a solution. You know, while you're running from the lion, you can't go, I am safe.
Right.
Yeah, but which is what's happening with a lot of these conflict active phases. You know, you go into work every day and your boss is mean, and you're having a battle with the lion, so to speak. So yeah, and the way that we live our lives now are not so biological. We're not living in harmony and connection with nature. We live in nuclear families, so most people don't have the support and love and protection of a tribe. Or, you know, the way people are raised and schooled and all that is kind of breeding ground for conflicts. Where was I going with that? Yeah, so nervous system regulation techniques are really helpful. One, you're innervating the vagus nerve, so it helps kind of access the subconscious and give you access more easily to perceptual shifts, to fresh understandings that can help you resolve your conflict.
Is that the same thing as I've heard of the Callahan technique? Is this from someone named Callahan, or is it different?
Not sure. Callahan. Is that? Yeah, I think Gary Craig, who developed EFT, it came out of. I might be wrong, but he was inspired by someone. Might be the Callahan you're talking about. And so I heard it
recently because EFT, so it's emotional freedom technique. And then the Callahan technique was also referred to as TFT, or thought field therapy.
No, yes. I'm not sure about thought field therapy. I'm not familiar with that.
Because they do the similar thing where you're saying a phrase or whatever, you're recognizing whatever you're dealing with, and you're tapping on certain spots. They sort of line up. There might be a couple of different places you tap that might not line up with EFT. But
the part of EFT I find really helpful, and I kind of mix it a bit with what you'd call maybe parts work. So a lot of people's stuck in these vibrations, in these programs. It's very absolute, as I said, kind of black and white thinking and rooted in identity and all that kind of thing. So it's helpful to go that part of me wants to resolve this, but part of me wants to stay in this state because the conflict might have happened as a child and it's unfair. So I might want to let go of being angry with my father, but the little child part of me wants to stamp my feet and go, it wasn't fair that he did that. And so I find that really helpful. I kind of switch between the two and
those are both very powerful. Yeah, it's
very intuitive for me. And sometimes people say, like I want to kind of talk about a session after, and I can't ever remember much of what happened.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's so helpful to have like many tools in your tool belt, because different things are going to work for different people, and they're going to respond differently, and they're going to gravitate towards different things. So it's beautiful that you have this little collection of things. And what would you say, Mel, to the purists out there that think that G&M should only be used within the confines of G&M?
My friend calls it the G&M black and whiters, which kind of ties into how I've been describing it. What would I say to them? Put me on the spot.
Well, maybe not to them, but what do you think are the limitations with that?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I can't speak for Dr. Harmer himself, but from what I understand of the man, that he also studied theology. For years, I think. I mean, he's an incredibly intelligent man who understands this on all levels. And so while, he was extremely persecuted during his time, which created territorial conflicts. And so I can understand from that point of view why the purists want to keep the knowledge pure, and they believe that there are saboteurs who want to come and spoil it, infiltrate the knowledge and spoil it in some way. So I get all that. But I do also think that he was one man who worked on this knowledge for a certain period of time, and got to be open to let it evolve and bring in new ideas and new ways. And so using these perception shifting techniques aren't really classified as pure G&M, but I certainly believe they have a place, a powerful place. Yeah.
Well, that's very informative. I think, it's a great intro for people to learn about this and to look into it more. And the resources we'll post in the show notes are definitely worth a read. And whenever something comes up, it's so empowering to cultivate this curiosity and trust in your body, in the way that you're designed, knowing that it's not just pure chaos. You're not just open to attack from outside invisible flying things that you should, do very paltry things to stop, like cover your face with a paper mask. That you're much more powerful than
coming
that.
To get you.
Yeah, there's much more beautiful things going on than what we've been told thus far. So. Great.
And for people that want to connect with you, Mel, and that may want to work with you, where can they find you?
My website's MG, my initials, Melissa Gray, mgfreedomcoach.com.au. And you can find me on MG Freedom Coach on Instagram as well, if you want to DM me there. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. We'll put those links.
Of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll put all your links in the show notes. Highly recommend. I've recommended so many people, referred so many people to you, and I've worked with you. You're amazing. And
thank you.
Yeah, I highly recommend people, especially for people that are wanting to sort of look at alternatives to the medical system but don't really know where to turn, because there are so many different alternatives now. Highly recommend looking into German new medicine, and with people like yourself.
Tried everything in conventional, and then tried everything, all the remedies in alternative, and they're looking for the next level up. It's a good place for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was an awesome chat.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I loved it, guys. Thank you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode, guys. If you would like to get in touch with Mel or work with her, and I've actually referred so many people to Mel since I met her, and I've had a session with her myself. She's amazing. All her links are in the show notes, so you can head to her website or connect with her on Instagram. We've also posted the link to that article that we mentioned. Highly recommend reading that. It's a really good read. And we've also posted the website that Mel mentioned that you can use as a resource. I think it's called learninggnm.com. So that's also in the show notes. So check those out. And of course, course, if you have any comments or questions about the episode, please reach out to us on socials or wherever you're listening. We'd love to join in on the conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. So I'm really excited for next week's episode with Mark Devine. He's a Navy Special Warfare commander with 20 years experience in the Navy. And then he created a program SEAL Fit out of what the Navy had commissioned him to do, which was basically restructure a training program for the physical fitness and durability, essentially, of anyone trying out for Navy SEALs. And he did so with spades. The results speak for themselves.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to miss next week's episode, guys. I had no idea who Mark Devine was before I met Isaac. And this was actually Isaac's get. Well done to Isaac, because I do all the guest booking. But Isaac just reached out and one day said to me, I've invited this guy on the show. And I was like, I have no idea who he is.
Yeah.
And after this interview, he's like legit one of my favorite people. He's a freaking legend. And we went deep on this episode. And I wasn't even expecting to go the places we went, but it was an amazing interview. We had lots of fun. He is such not just a wealth of knowledge, but a wealth of experience. He has so much wisdom to share. This guy has like graced the stages of Nike events and
he's spoken at Fortune 500 companies.
Fortune 500 companies. Like he's a big deal.
He's trained executive CEOs of big companies through his Unbeatable Mind program and other things.
Yeah, he's a big deal. So it was an absolute honor to have him on. And yeah, I don't want to hype it anymore, but stay tuned for the next episode.
Yeah. So to make sure you don't miss that, make sure you sign up for our Substack. And if you're an email subscriber on Substack, you'll get the notification there or in the app if you have the app. So definitely stay tuned for that because this episode is going to deliver some really powerful secrets to success and overcoming obstacles and building the best version of yourself. And that's so central to this podcast and what we're doing here. And also personally, what we're both interested in doing for ourselves. So look out. I mean, I could see us practicing some of the things that we'll be learning from that. And in the next 6 months, we'll see where we're at, but I know it's going to be huge. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So stay tuned for that. Everyone enjoy the rest of your week and we will see you next time.